This episode is made possible by Badlands Pets. As you all know, Mojo, my precious baby, is the reason why I found love in the first place. He made me feel love again. So I would do anything to ensure his health and longevity. And actress Katherine Heigl and I have that in common. She's helped save over 16,000 dogs through her foundation. And after doing a ton of research, she feels there's one place we can look to improve any dog's health, and that's their food. So fortunately, she found that just by adding a few special superfoods to her dog's food, she saw huge transformations in their health. So she's made a 20-minute video explaining step by step how anyone can do the same thing to see incredible changes in their dog's health. I've definitely re-looked at what I'm feeding Mojo and making sure that, hey, he only has one life to live, and I want to make sure it's the best damn life. So if you want to keep your dog healthy and happy, go to badlandsfood.com/dateable and watch Catherine's video right now. Again, that's badlandsfood.com/dateable.
I was so excited to get my shipment from Last Bottle Wines in the mail the other day, full of incredible red wines, all from Napa Valley. I love wine tasting, so having this to my door couldn't be happier. Also, couldn't be more excited that today's episode is brought to you by Last Bottle Wines. If you don't know already, they're a Napa-based online wine shop with a twist. They offer just one handpicked wine per day until it sells out, and they're always at incredible prices. We're talking 30 to 70% off retail. And the best part is that there's no subscriptions, no fees, and no minimum purchase. And I could not be more excited to bring this offer right now because they're having a marathon sale, which is coming up March 28th and 29th. Even better, we're offering Dateable listeners 10% off your first order with code DATEABLE. So if you are a wine lover like me, this is a great time to join. And did I mention that shipping is 100% free? So what are you waiting for? Mark your calendar for March 28th and 29th, or get on it earlier if you want. You can sign up at lastbottlewines.com and use code DATEABLE and find out why Last Bottle is the most fun way to discover and buy amazing wine.
The Dateable podcast features real stories from real people of how they make modern dating work, or not. I'm your host, Yue, former dating coach turned dating insider, if you will. On each episode, you'll hear commentary from my producer, Julie Krafchick, and other surprise co-hosts. This episode is brought to you by Together, a podcast and online magazine that provides tools for better relationships. While it's important to navigate dating and early relationships, what happens 10, 20, 30 years down the road? Listen to stories from real people who have put in the work to form amazing partnerships. Visit together.guide or listen to the podcast on iTunes and all major podcast apps. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Dateable, a show all about modern dating. Sometimes things happen when you least expect them to happen. And sometimes when that happens, it impacts the rest of your dating life. I don't know how that could happen, but our guest today, Chris, has a story for us that is along those lines. And we hear this all the time. When you go out looking for something, that thing may not happen, but it's when you least expect it.
Yeah, It really is. Hi, thanks for having me on the show.
Let me just give a little background so we can paint a picture of who you are, Chris. You're 33 years old. You've been in San Francisco for 4.5 years, originally from Australia, down under. You're currently in a monogamous relationship, which is sort of part of the story, right?
Yep.
Okay, let's get into it then.
Sure. So it was sort of after years and years and years of being on every dating app under the sun, I sort of gave up and wasn't really thinking about dating at all. And there was one day when I just needed to get home from work. And so, I requested an Uber and went around the corner and hopped in and there was a girl in the front seat and we just sort of started talking. And, we're on the road on the way home, only a 10-minute ride. But as we're talking, she's like getting cut off in traffic. And I'm like,
so this is the Uber driver?
She's still talking,
okay.
A super calm person. And we had this amazing conversation and I'm just kind of like, wow, this girl is like really level-headed. I would be so angry with all these drivers. And I'm going, I really like the sound of this like the way she is just is really cool. And I said, hey, look, it's really awesome how like you're not really caring about all this craziness going on around you. She's like, oh yeah, I'm from Ukraine. In Ukraine, like you get cut off in traffic, people try to run into you, all sorts of insane stuff. So this is nothing. And I was like, oh, okay, so she's European. She's tall and blonde, which I've noticed from the back seat. And this is like a thing which I, for some reason,
Is that your type?
I have a type, yes.
Tall and blonde.
Tall
Okay.
and blonde. And I said, I'm really enjoying this conversation. Can we like maybe catch up another time? And she said, yeah, sure. And I grabbed her number. I didn't creep on her by asking for an item afterwards, but yeah, so I messaged her and she messaged back, and we went on a few dates and really hit it off. And now we're in this relationship. And I guess like for me, I was not expecting anything. And from her point of view, she says that when she was about to accept the ride, she was also about to sign off for the night. And she decided not to because she thought, I hate when drivers cancel on riders when I take Uber. So she was like, you know what? I will just do this one last ride, and the rest was history.
Well, tell us about what was happening the rest of that night or before this happened. What kind of mood were you in? What stage in life were you in?
Yeah, I was sort of thinking of leaving San Francisco. I was like, you know what?
Okay.
I've been in this city for so long. I've been trying everything to meet someone, having no luck at all. And I was like, I'm fed up. And, I put a time limit on how long I'd stay. And, this particular day, I just had a really long day at work and I was like exhausted. And, we just had a pretty relaxed conversation, pretty standard stuff. You speak to your Uber driver, how's your day been and all that stuff. And she said, I work at a startup as a PM and I take Uber. I'd take the odd ride here and there in order to have some company on the long drives to the South Bay. So, I liked that she was like a pretty social person. But yeah, like I was just not in that frame of mind at all.
So it's pretty bold asking your Uber driver that is essentially at work, right?
Yeah.
On a date, especially in the climate this day and age where things can be perceived as sexual harassment and other things. How did you get over that barrier? Was that even a thought to you?
Oh man, it was my thought the whole time. I was like, man, I got to figure out a way to ask this girl that's A, not going to intimidate her, B, going to not scare her and have her not text me back, and C, isn't going to sound like I'm just coming on to her. And so the angle I arrived at was like, I'm really enjoying this conversation, which was true, right?
Yeah.
She was super friendly.
Authentic.
We were talking about all kinds of cool stuff with startups. And what she does for a living and what I do for a living. It's always easy to talk to Uber drivers when I guess I work at Uber, and
okay,
that helps a lot.
That's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, so that always starts up that
kind of.
I got to ask this.
That is we met at work.
Yeah, yeah, it was colleagues. No, she actually they actually have this structure where she's in a separate organization.
Yeah.
So even though we do technically work for the same company, she's contracted to. But so I was like, okay, this makes it not a work conflict of interest, so that's okay.
But there's still that she's at work.
Yeah.
So it was just ease into it.
So I sort of thought, I can't just ask this girl out. I might say, well, hey, listen, I don't really want to force you into this, but I would love to grab your number and continue this conversation. And I guess I don't know for sure, but you ask someone out and sometimes you come across too strong, I think, and then you don't get a text back. And I was sort of, how do I walk that fine line? So I definitely made it more about being friends. Let's just start off and just continue this conversation we've been enjoying, and then see what happens from there.
So how did it progress?
So we went out. Oh my gosh, I think we went for a drink in Chinatown a couple weeks later, and we just were talking nonstop, right? And then somehow we ended up walking back to my place, which is pretty nearby, and we went up to the roof of my building, and we just kept on talking, and it was just this easy thing. I never had to force it. So, as opposed to other, dating situations where sometimes you fall into a pattern and you're in a very safe place where you're not really revealing who you are, especially having an accent. People go, oh my God, you've got an accent. And then you're in super safe territory. You're just able to recite your sort of rehearsed thing of, this is what my country's like. None of that really happened.
And so did you ask her, does she get hit on a lot by guys?
I should ask her actually.
You should. No, you haven't asked her. I would like to know. I'm curious to know. And did you guys ever talk about that night? What was it that compelled her to give you her phone number?
Yeah. So I found out later that she hadn't actually seen my face because it was dark. So for her, it was
Like,
this,
who is this guy
it was-
behind
I'm
the
like,
car?
that's really cool, man. There was like a total leap of faith for her.
Well, she liked your personality, so
Yeah.
that's good, right?
Yeah, well, hey,
It's
if
a
I had
blind
nothing
date.
else, hey, at least he's got the good personality. But she was like, you could have been 45 years old. You could have been, you could have been anything. And
Wow.
I'm kind of glad that you turned out to be who you turned out to be.
So she didn't even really see you when she gave
I didn't
you
know
her
this.
phone
I
number?
learned this through this trip. Like, I think if you're driving, like, you like some drivers, I don't know if you've been in Uber where the driver is looking at you in the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? But a lot of drivers are just focused on the road because
Yeah.
they're trying to drive safely and get, deal with all the information going on in front of them. And they don't get a chance to see the rider.
So she's a very responsible person.
Very responsible.
Risky.
Yeah. We actually had an episode where a girl met her boyfriend in a Lyft. Sorry, your competitor.
Yeah.
But he was a driver, or he was a Lyft driver, and that's how they met, and they dated for 2 years.
Wait, so did he ask her out?
She asked him.
She asked him, oh, girl,
Yeah.
making a move.
But I think it's tough if you're.
Well, they have the backseat driver, right? Like, there's a backseat dater. Is that a thing?
But also, like, if you're at work, they're like your customer in a way. Like, there's a weird dynamic. Like, if she asked you out, like your
I don't
girlfriend
know
or
what
like
you
the
think about
guy,
as the
like,
customer.
yeah, like
Yeah.
there's definitely something a little off that I don't know if that's in there. I'm assuming that's probably a no-no on Uber
Yeah.
and Lyft's terms.
Well, there's the like Uber pool, right? If you're two people in an Uber pool and you sit next to each other and hit it off, like that, I think is okay. But there's like a power dynamic when
Yep.
you're the driver and the rider.
There is.
It's a
So
fine
you
line.
said right before you met her, you were thinking about leaving San Francisco
Mhm.
because you didn't have much luck dating. What was your dating life like?
Yeah, look, before that, I mean, I'd been on every app and tried all sorts of different approaches, in terms of what do you say, how do you go for this. And then I had no trouble getting dates. I think the trouble was when it came to second and third dates, and turning that into something where I felt a connection and a bond with somebody. There's a thing that I think online dating does, not just to other people, but also to you, where it's like, oh, that person had a tiny thing wrong with them. I'm going to just discard the possibility of them. And I think after a little while, it becomes a habit and it's not even conscious anymore. You just do it without realizing. And I think that was happening to me.
So you mentioned that when we were talking through
Yep.
Facebook Messenger about having you on the show, you mentioned the years of chasing something looked pointless after this happening. What did you mean by chasing?
Yeah, so if you really want to get into a relationship, if you know what you're looking for a long-term real commitment. Like, I'm not someone who was ever into polyamory or experimentation or anything. I'm just a very traditional kind of guy, and I always knew that was what I wanted, and I just wasn't finding that. And it wasn't as though I was finding other things. I was just finding not that. Like, these connections that I was finding on all these apps were very short-lived and frivolous compared to what I was really looking for. So it wasn't until I sort of got away from that I realized that, a big part of it was the effect it was having on me and what I was putting out there. And I kind of realized that I had to stop being in that space and meeting people that were in that space and change myself so that I wouldn't act in a way where I would attract those sorts of people. But, that's taking it a little further, I think. But It was like, I wasn't getting what I wanted in that environment of doing online dating. So I stopped.
Do you feel like there was anything that changed in your life when you met your girlfriend? Did anything happen around this time? Were there any changes, I guess?
Yeah, I'd sort of come to a end of a phase of kind of enjoying having those frivolous connections and, having all kinds of fun times, basically. That's fun for a while, and then you get through that phase and you say, okay, I've kind of done enough of that, whatever level of enough is comfortable for you. And I had reached that point. So it all kind of coincided all at once.
Was that like you immediately did and then met her, or was there like a time gap between hitting that point and then meeting her? Yeah,
there was a definite time gap there. I think I was like, okay, I'm kind of done with this sort of phase of like just having fun. And now I'm looking for something serious. And there was a lot of frustration because you try the apps and quit the apps, or you try hobbies and that doesn't work out. So I don't know how I like randomly ran into this situation where I got in an Uber, but I think that it was just going to happen eventually anyway. At least that's what I hope. So yeah, there's a bit of a pit of frustration there once you decide to really go serious.
We always talk about this idea of context of how you meet someone. And
Yeah.
I don't even know if you guys would have matched on a dating app, right? Or even if she had if she would even stand out in a dating app and vice versa.
Mhm.
But because you were in a context where you weren't looking for someone to date, you were purely trying to get home, I'm guessing.
Yes.
So
Yep.
you're probably in a comfortable, relaxed state. You're in a car where you work for the company, so you're kind of like, this is my comfort zone. I'm going home. And that's when you met someone, because you were probably in a natural state. You're
Yeah.
not like on the prowl.
There's context is a big part. And I think also a big part, the big thing that played a part here is, we wouldn't have met any other way because our social circles didn't cross over. So, you meet in a bar and you meet other people that love to go to bars, but they're also in a frame of mind where they're like, I want to get drunk. And she's just not someone like that, and I would go to a bar and get drunk and have fun with my friends, whereas she would prefer to have a much smaller, much more intimate social circle that she really trusts.
Mm-hmm.
And those circles don't cross over. But I like someone like that. And I've kind of always wanted to meet someone like that. So meeting in this calmer environment of an Uber is the right context to be able to figure that out.
So you said that you have theories about the progression of relationships.
Ooh.
I love theories. I love theories.
Enlighten us. What are your theories?
Yeah. So I think that it is that sort of, you start out with like, I'm just going to try everything, and then you figure out that some stuff doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
But probably the most interesting thing I learned is listening to season 5 of Dateable.
Oh.
One of the things that came
We
through.
only paid you to say that.
I know. I love people who do their homework.
If you haven't listened to season 5, I think one of the things I liked was like, there was also a theme coming through that of like, think about yourself and who you are and what impact that's having on your dating experiences. I hadn't really taken it to my own self. I was always like, oh, I really hate this app or that app or this way of this dating happening in this culture, where I had never thought to say, well, who do I want to be and how do I want to feel? How do I want someone I meet to make me feel?
Right.
So the progression I saw was that once I started really focusing in on that instead of focusing in on trying to change the way I was doing dating, but making it more of a self-improvement exercise. It really sort of allowed me to address some of the problems I had with the way that I was doing things. And
what's an example of like before and after, like how you would address something?
So, like something small is like, instead of ghosting someone, just text them and say, hey, listen, I had a really good time. Like, be nice to people, treat people the way that you would like to be treated yourself. And then you start to realize that there are people out there that won't treat you that way. And you start to say, well, I don't necessarily want to be around that type of person. So you don't put as much energy into those types of people.
Right. So you're not spending your time chasing something that's not right for you versus actually spending energy on the people who are suitable for you.
Yeah.
Right. What are some of those learnings that you had about yourself through this whole process?
I think I learned that I had put a lot of emphasis on just trying to have very light-hearted sexual relationships instead of like deeper relationships that were built on top of a friendship. And so I would chase after women that would sleep with me instead of women that like I actually wanted to hang around with. And like, I'd enjoy hanging out with these women, but it would be for me more about just who can I sleep with and how can I just like get laid. And once I got out of that frame of mind, I started to say, well, I've been changing my own personality in order to be someone that appeals to these people. And it's not a true myself. And it's also tricking them into thinking that, hey, maybe he's going to change into somebody that he's not today because he's sort of a chameleon. And that's like wasted energy for everybody.
And so I guess it depends on what life stage you're in, what your intentions are. If you are just casual dating and want to be out there for fun, that could be a tactic. You just mold yourself and be a chameleon to whoever you're dating. Or if you're actually looking for a relationship, it's a great test to say, if you remove all the romance and all the sexuality, would I be friends with this person in real life? And I think that's a great test to see who someone would be a great partner for you.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So did you have any moments that stood out, like that
Mm.
moment? We've talked about this like rock bottom moment
Yes.
that you're just like, I need to change something. Like either you got too drunk or something happened, like anything that stands out to you.
Yeah, there was like, there's a couple of similar occasions, recently, about maybe towards the end of last year, where girls that I had been seeing while I was in this frame of mind of like, I just want a, very casual relationship, had come to me after maybe, this has been going on for 6 months, I want to say. And it happened a couple of times where they would be like, hey, listen, we should actually really go on a date. And I'd be like, oh God, no, I don't want to do that. Not without saying that, but like I'd realized to my own self that I never actually wanted to go on a date with this person in the first place. I only ever wanted to do, and I was like, what is wrong with me? Like I should want someone I spend so much time around and have such a great, like, just super casual friendship with, where we just shoot the shit and hang out. I should want to actually treat this person as something a little more. And I didn't. And I was like, all right, I got to stop hanging out with people that I am only happy to go to a certain relationship point with. I should want to go all the way with someone that I'm going to spend that much time with.
So this happened with multiple people.
Yeah, it was a simultaneous realization. Okay. And that was where I started to say, well, if this is happening with multiple other people in very similar scenarios at around the same sort of time, the problem is me. So,
I mean, that's very mature of you. A lot of people would push it to other people, so that's really great that you were able to take
but
that
also,
step back.
if you are on the receiving end of sort of a casual relationship like that and you're not okay with it, get out of that relationship. We hear it all the time. I'm in this casual thing with this guy and it's not progressing, but I'm going to hang on to see where it goes. I think we're getting serious. And it ends up not getting there. So I think it's also just like, if you're in that scenario, you should do something about it.
But I do think, obviously different people have different realization points, but if you realize that someone is not more to you than a certain level, and that's not a deep relationship, it is the right thing to do to get out, like you did, like basically cut ties with that person instead of continue to lead them on. Yeah. So yeah, I think in some parts dating, like you're just figuring it out, but sometimes you'll hit that point and that's when it becomes not okay, when you just like keep leading them on. And like if you kept going on dates with them and like doing all this stuff, and then in your back of your head, you're like, I don't really like this person, then that would have been like too far, I think.
It really starts to make you question what you're doing. So I would say, like, yes, if you're in a situation where someone's, maybe going to change and they haven't shown any signs of changing, get out, yes. And, don't do that. But I think the other thing I'd say is like ask for what you want.
Yeah.
And I think in this culture, a lot of people aren't told that that's okay. It's definitely okay if you ask for what you want and the person immediately says, well, I'm not going to give that to you. You've hopefully saved yourself some time.
Absolutely. I had a guy friend who entered into a relationship with this woman where he didn't see it going too far. Like he really liked hanging out with her. He enjoyed having sex with her. And he said that to her. He's like, I don't see this progressing more than where we are right now. How do you want to proceed? And she said, okay, if we don't see a future together, let's keep this going until I say it's no longer okay with me. So they carried this on for about 6 or 7 months until she said, you know what, I'm getting a little attached, so we're going to just have to end it here. And they ended very well. So something like that, even. It's like, it's not so black and white. It's just more like, let's just see how this goes. But if we're not comfortable, then someone should say something.
Well, because sometimes even if you're looking for like the one, right? You're not going to just like stall your life completely. Yeah. Like you haven't found them. So there's a line of like potentially having relationships, air quotes, that like aren't necessarily relationships, but are fulfilling in some way. Yep. But the problem becomes once you're not on the same page and you're not being fulfilled. So like to the example you just gave, I mean, she basically was like, okay, I acknowledge this isn't going to be a serious thing, but let's see if I can be okay not being serious. And then once she wasn't okay, that's when you cut the ties.
Get out. Yeah.
So was for her a factor in this the amount of time she feels like she has before she wants to be in a serious relationship? Like, if you're in a rush to find a serious relationship, you're not going to sit around for 6 or
Yeah,
7 months. You might
right.
stop after 2 months.
To him, from his point of view, she said, because I haven't spoken to her, she said she didn't know what she was looking for, but she knew she enjoyed spending time with him.
Uh-huh.
So she wanted to see if she could just spend time with him and just have it be status quo until she needed something more.
Well, I was going to say, I've been in that situation years ago where I didn't know what I was looking for. I thought I wanted a relationship, but then I also was just having fun dating around, and then had this friend that turned into more, that basically was like, I don't want to be in a serious relationship. And I kind of went into it with that mentality of well, we'll just see what happens. And then now I will never do that again. So it's good to learn that lesson. It's like, if someone doesn't want it, you're not going to be the one that changes them. But I think I didn't know what I wanted. So if I knew I wanted a serious relationship and then that didn't match up, I think at this point in my life, I'd be able to very much say X to that.
Yep.
So some of it comes back, and you kind of brought this up, this, you felt like this worked for you because you knew what you wanted at this point in your life.
I think once you know what you want, I think that there's things that are happening all the time, and if you know what you want, you can grab them. But if you don't know what you want, it might go right past you and you'll never find out.
In the Uber.
Yeah.
Right
Get out of
past
the
you in an
Uber
Uber.
and never
Yep.
find out. Yeah.
Jeez.
So I've got a quick question before we do the next thing. Is something that I'm curious about with you said before, what you were just talking about with the just see what happens.
Yeah.
Do you think that for someone who's never tried the let's just see what happens, that the idea that doesn't work, or because it didn't work for you in that situation, do you think that's something that people should avoid even trying?
It's time to take a quick break so we can tell you about the latest service we have been building over at DATEABLE. We'll be offering a platform to connect you with vetted dating experts from our network to help with everything from dating profile reviews, coaching to see where you're getting stuck in dating, and even ways to get real feedback about your dating style. The sessions typically run from 30 minutes to an hour and can all be done via Skype or Google Hangouts, so you can be anywhere. We're so excited about this because so many of you wrote in asking how you can find people to help up your dating game, and this should be a great way to get personalized, affordable advice. We'll be adding more coaches and more services, and of course, let us know if there's something specific you like to see. To meet the coaches and book your session today, visit dateablepodcast.com/coaching. Now back to the show.
Do you think that for someone who's never tried the let's just see what happens, that the idea that doesn't work, or because it didn't work for you in that situation, do you think that's something that people should avoid even trying, or do you think that's something they should give a shot to?
I think there's a line, right? I think for mine I'll just use my own example because it's mine. I'm not going to speak with everyone's, but I kind of had hesitations from the beginning because I knew the person, didn't think he was ready for a serious relationship, went into it anyways, and then basically once he said it, I still kept going with it, which I think was fine because I didn't think I knew what I wanted either. But once it started to hurt, that's when I think it was time to leave, and I made the mistake of staying. So I think it's I can't speak and say that's the universal for everyone, but I think there's pivotal points throughout it that you can make that decision. Some people, if they're I just want to be in a serious relationship and this person doesn't want to be, that's done. So some people might have that mind frame, but then other times things can develop. People can get to know each other better. People do shift what they wanted. You said even just a couple months ago, you were in a little bit different frame than you are now. So things do change. I think it's when you're getting hurt by it or you're misaligned with it, that's when it becomes a problem.
I think it's important to communicate your parameters and what you want. So in a situation of let's see what happens, it's not just a free-for-all. Oh, let's just let things ride out.
And that's what my situation was.
And that's always a
Exactly.
dangerous part, right? Because if you just let's see what happens and you're waiting by your phone for a week waiting for that person to call. But I think if you set parameters okay, I'm willing to see where this goes, but in the beginning, this is minimum what I need.
Yeah.
I need 2 days of your time.
Yep.
I need to go on at least 1 date a week. You know, these are things I'm happy with. And at the end of each week, let's regroup and talk about what worked and what didn't work.
Right.
Even if you're not in a committed, technically a relationship with someone, if someone's in your life, you're in a relationship with them. And you have to work through that relationship.
I mean, I think that's great in theory to have
Of
those
course, yeah.
conversations, but sometimes you're just not at that comfort level with someone, especially if they're ambiguous. But I think you can do what you said, but check in with yourself.
Mhm.
Like, let's say you have a guy that's pretty casual, right? But you're like, well, maybe this could go somewhere. And you know that you want someone that's like crazy about you and like reaching out and planning that date. If they don't do that,
Mhm.
like you can maybe try reaching out to them and kind of like feeding it and seeing what happens. And if they don't respond, then you're like, well, that might not be the type of relationship we're going to have.
Mhm.
This might be more casual. Am I okay with that? Or am I not? And if you're okay with it, then maybe it's a reset. Okay, this person's not going to be my next boyfriend,
Yeah.
but maybe there's someone I can see once in a while. And if you're not okay with it, then maybe it's time to cut that person out.
Well, even in your situation, Chris, you went into this wanting to see what would happen, and you want to start at the baseline of a friendship. How did this friendship turn into a romantic relationship?
Well, I mean, she was beautiful. So
Well, I mean,
it was like, okay, you passed the bar of I find you incredibly beautiful, and we had this amazing conversation. We just got along like a house on fire, and so I think it was
like a house on
Oh,
fire.
is that an Australian expression?
I think so.
I've never.
Get
Wait, how
along
do you
like
get
a
along
house
like a
on
house on fire?
That's 'cause
Sound
the-
like a way you get along.
I would want to get
It's
along
like-
like a house on fire.
Well, it was pretty hot. I don't know.
Okay,
It's
okay.
like, I wish I knew where this
I guess
expression
it's
comes from.
hot. That makes sense.
Okay. Like get going, get it on. Get it on.
Well, yeah, I know, but you know, like in Australia, we'd use that between friends. But it just means that we had a really, really good time hanging out. So it was unlike all these other relationships I've had in the past that were very much, okay, what do I need to sort of behave? How do I behave in order to achieve what I want to achieve? It was just like, actually, I can drop all pretense and just be me.
Yeah.
And yeah,
That's
really
the
cool.
one way it always works. Every time I think from our own personal experience, but any guests we've had when they've met someone, it's always when they just don't think about all their next calculated steps. And they just
Oh, yeah. And I think the other thing that really told me is that, like, after we'd been on a few dates, I sort of didn't feel any motivation to go on other dates or to have other associations, other relationships. And I very politely broke off basically everything else that was going on at that time. And, you know, since then, there's been a few times when there's been an opportunity to maybe have like a one-night stand or like maybe go on a date. And I just haven't felt the need or the desire. So I think it speaks to something I wanted to bring up about the parameters. Like sometimes you don't know your parameters. Same thing with sometimes you don't feel the motivation to explore anymore. In both cases, it's because you're at a certain stage in the progression.
Yeah.
But if you're not there yet, that's okay. Because you'll get there in the end at your own pace. And
Totally.
trying to rush yourself, you'll probably miss some of the fun that's there to be had along the
That's
way.
very true.
I think
Yeah, that's a
people
good
need
point.
to have that fun. I even think people need to have the bad experience because
Yeah.
it teaches them what they'll never stand for again.
Sometimes
Maybe
you
it's
gotta,
women
you got to
more,
experience it. Yeah.
yeah, like sometimes just hearing it from others, you're like, oh, I'd never do that. But then when you're in that
You do
position,
it. We all do it.
Yep, but I think every one of my girlfriends has had one of those like guys in their lives that you're just like, what were you thinking? And now looking back, they're like, what was I thinking? But it helped them get to where they are now
Oh yeah.
and meet their person.
All my guy friends have this same narrative of I was chasing after this girl. I felt like she was out of my league. And when I finally got her, I realized she was not right for me. And now I know what I'm looking for. Or at least I know, like, more seriously what I look for in a relationship. I hear this all the time from my guy
word
friends.
is chasing. And you brought this up too. Like anytime you're chasing means that you're running after something.
Yeah, and they're
there's
not. Yeah,
like
and they're
you're-
not stopping.
Exactly. They're not in like sync with you. But like when you find that person, like you're not chasing each other. You're just with each other.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Shall we go to some takeaways?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I have a few takeaways. We get this question quite a bit from our friends and our listeners, which is, at what point do you stop pursuing? And it's kind of an interesting question because at what point do you give up working on a relationship or trying to get a relationship to start? So from your story, Chris, there are 3 takeaways of ways to measure if you should keep pursuing or not. One is the friendship measure.
I love
Take
that.
away, I love that too. If you take away the romance and the sex, will you be friends with this person?
Because at
this
the end of the day, when you get old,
yeah,
Like
That's all you have.
When nothing works anymore.
When nothing works anymore.
We're still just two people.
Wrinkly
Yeah,
and
when you have
ugly.
children and like other stuff. Like it's like I need to just be like, do you genuinely enjoy the company of your significant other?
Yep, exactly. So that's one. That's one test. Two is, I think media blows this out of proportion when they talk about like getting the butterflies when you see someone and just feeling this like nervous energy because you're so excited to meet them. I think that's great in the beginning of a relationship, but if you're feeling that even 3, 4, 5 dates into a relationship, there's actually a mismatch here, because when you're so nervous about seeing someone, you feeling the butterflies, it means that you're trying to chase after someone who's not reciprocating. So you're still not on the same page. When you're in a solid relationship with someone, there is no nervousness.
No.
You're not like,
you're just yourself.
You're just
Yeah,
yourself.
like friends.
Yeah.
Like good friends.
And you were saying, Chris, like you're not trying to put on some role. You're not like acting out this role for them.
Chameleon. I love that.
For them to like you back. That's not the goal here. So that's test number 2. And 3 is, if you walk away from an interaction with someone and you're being too analytical about it, like if you're asking your friends like, oh, and then she said this, and then like she texted this time, you're not on the same page.
No.
I think it's time to walk away, because if you can't communicate with the person you're dating, there's something wrong there too. And stop wasting your friend's time on analyzing what he or she is trying to say.
So true. And they could be at a point in their progression where they're not quite ready for the thing that you're looking for from them, where they text you back.
Exactly.
Or whatever it is.
Well, I think
that you're
that's
analyzing.
a huge takeaway from my part, is like I understand this fully, because I think there's definitely, it's hard to like define what that switch is that goes off. And I think sometimes it does take a couple moments, like you mentioned, with like realizing that you didn't want to see these women at a deeper level. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times it's just like a subconscious switch that goes off, that you're like, okay, I don't want to keep like going to the bars every night and just hooking up and all this stuff. Like I want something real. And I'm not really sure when that happens, but it does. And I think sometimes you have to be in that mindset if you are going to be in a serious relationship. And I think for me, at least, like there was a big period in my life I was not in that mindset. And it's like easier now to look back on that. But sometimes you're like, oh, like, why haven't I like found the one and gotten married? But you're like, well, for a chunk of my life, I just wasn't looking for that. Yeah. And now that I am looking for that, I either found it or am in the process of finding it. So sometimes it's like just realizing that you go through different life stages and progressions, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And also, yes, to add to that as well, is that pit of despair I described, because there was at least a few months there where I was just like, well, I wasn't getting what I wanted the way I was doing things before, and I've changed a few things and I'm still not getting what I want. So it takes a little while.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to persist at it if you really believe that it's where you want to take your attitude to getting to that place.
And I'm with you. Every relationship I've been in has just happened out of nowhere. Like it's been all the times that I have not been like thinking like I'm going to go to this like hot club and meet someone. It's always like this like random event that I'm like barely dressed up for, you know, it's like, or just like a random friend that I get introduced to, or like something. And like, I think your story shows that like it can happen anywhere. It can be the Uber driver, like it can be anyone.
Yeah.
Definitely. Cool. Question of the day. This one comes from Randy, who says, you guys always say that timing is everything. For me, I'm at a stage in my life where I'm ready for something serious, but I keep meeting people who are completely opposite from me, as in they're not looking for anything serious. What am I doing wrong? Or how can I find more like-minded people?
I think that if you're looking at the people in the environment you're in and how that's affecting what you're putting out there, like have a think about what sorts of people you're allowing yourself to meet. You know, if you're on dating apps, you're probably meeting people that have someone else around the corner. And so if you really want to feel special, for example, you know, it's probably not the right place to go, because those people could just stop after 2-3 dates with you and go and date somebody else. Or, you know, maybe you're meeting people in bars and that's not going to lead to a long-term connection because of the context side of things that we already talked about today. So I think like have a think about, as my answer to that would be, have a think about the environments you're looking for people in, and try and think really hard about whether they're the right ones for you, for what you want.
Well, I remember during like a period where I was serial dating, and also with the guy that I mentioned that wasn't in a serious relationship, I remember being like, I really want a serious relationship. And my friend being like, do you really? Like questioning me, because she's like, all your actions are not matching up with that. Like, you would not still be trying to like date this guy that said he doesn't want to be in a serious relationship if you wanted to be in a serious relationship. So there's that, or you wouldn't be telling the story and living for this story of dating if you really wanted to be in a serious relationship. So I think a lot of times it's easier, and now like looking back on it, I'm like, I wasn't ready for a serious relationship, but looking back on it, it's easier because it's like in hindsight. But while it's happening, maybe it's looking at your actions and it's like, okay, I say I want this, but do I really? And if you still do and you feel like your core that you do, like it's time to correct your actions, like Chris was saying.
You get back what you put out there, right?
Yeah.
So if you say you're looking for something serious, define in your head what that serious means.
Right.
What does that entail? What are you doing to put in the effort to make sure something is serious? So look into your own actions. The other thing I would say is, why not troubleshoot this a little bit? Ask for feedback.
Yeah.
The next time you go on a date with someone, you find out they're not looking for anything real, ask them, what was it about me that you were attracted to in the first place? And I keep attracting people who are in your similar boat.
Yeah.
Why do you think that's happening? What do you have to lose, right? You're not trying to pursue anything else with them.
Yep.
So
Right.
ask for feedback.
If it's the last time you go on a date with them, that's true. And I would
Who
also,
cares?
Who cares?
Yeah, I'd also say like create space in your life by not doing the things that aren't serving you. So you never know what might fill in that gap. As soon as you stop doing a certain thing, maybe something else will come along, and that might be how you
Could be in an Uber. And
Yeah, you never know. Yeah. But that's a really good point, because if you're trying to fill a void, if you want to get into something serious because you're lonely or you're bored, those are not reasons to get into a serious relationship. And of course, you're going to attract people who entertain you, who keep you on your toes, and those are not the people that you want to be in a relationship with eventually, maybe.
Well, I remember like when I thought I wanted to be in a serious relationship and then realized I was not ready for this. This was like years ago. And I remember being like, oh, I just want someone that will like go out with me and my friends. And it's like, that's really not like what you should, like, I mean, that's definitely not what I'm looking for now. Like, obviously I want someone that gets along with my friends, but that's not like the top of the list. The fact that was the top of the list made it seem like I just wanted like added company on like this going out to bars and nightlife routine that I had.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So then how did that change that you got from where you were in that place to like where you are now, that your priorities have shifted?
Yeah. I mean, this was years ago, and I had a serious relationship in between this too. So, but at that point, I definitely felt like I was also in a different place than I was back then. I don't know. It's like you asked again. It's like hard to pinpoint that exact moment.
Yeah, there's certain points in time, right? There's
like,
something that happens, and then you go, okay, that's not important to me anymore, and I can leave that in the past.
Exactly, and it's like, yeah. I mean, I think like it's hard because like with my last boyfriend, it was definitely serious, but I'm looking for something obviously more serious because it didn't work out now. But back then, I think it was just a combination of being just like more open to letting someone in my life and wanting to share my life with someone. But now I think it's like I want a partner in life. So I think there's just like progressions, and some of it is each relationship builds. Like you realize what wasn't working or serving you and whatnot. And some of it's just growing up and friends settling down and changing. Like there's a lot of factors I think that go into it. It's hard to...
Yeah,
it's so true.
I think it's hard for some people to see past the present. So one of the things my mom did, because we talk on the phone every day, and when I was dating in New York, I felt like I wanted to be in a relationship with this guy that I was pursuing aggressively. And he was also, I mean, he never lied to me, and he was always very upfront with me that he didn't know what he wanted. And I just kept pursuing, and I kept telling my mom, I'm ready for a relationship. I think I'm ready to marry this guy. I think this is a guy for me. And she goes, picture 30 years down the line. Do you still want to be with someone who keeps you like this? Like who has this sort of impact on you, who makes you cry all the time, who makes you upset, who also has the power to make you so happy one day and so upset the next day? Do you see longevity with this person? And I was like, thanks, Mom. I don't.
Well, I think there is a shift, like I mentioned with the guy that said, like, I don't want to be in a serious relationship. That was a friend that turned into more. I almost like saw it as like a challenge.
Yeah,
like, I'm going to prove him. It was like an ego thing. And there was definitely a piece of that going on.
Yeah.
But then with my ex-boyfriend, the last one, I just genuinely enjoyed being around him and like having him in my life. And I think there was a very different motive in like going into that. And I think anytime you're coming from a pure place of ego, that means you're not ready.
Yeah. That's very true.
Very, very true.
And pride.
Pride and ego. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool. Any other takeaways? This was a great discussion.
I mean, I think you've covered it off really well. It's like a really thorough summary of what we've talked about.
I'm just glad that season 5 was one of your pivotal
Free
moments.
plugs. Yeah, definitely go
I'm
back.
a new man, season 5.
What was the moment that really changed your perspective? Oh,
So I
it's Dateable
think-
season 5.
Yeah, the whole season, just like all 12
I'll
hours.
slip you the 100
It
later.
was one long
Thanks
plane
for
flight
that.
back to Sydney.
You get a nice tip. You get a nice tip.
binge
Just
dateable.
binge watch Dateable. No, but I think there was something that happened there where UA started talking about takeaways for a person that are not about changing their environment, but about thinking about how they're reacting to the things that are happening and what they're doing in response to that. Like optimizing yourself instead of your dating or instead of your way you live. And I just realized I'd never actually tried that before.
Well, you're welcome. No, but seriously, I do want to know though. I'm super curious. How is dating in the U.S. different than dating in Australia?
So in Australia, basically all my friends are having babies. And here, I'm 33 and it feels awesome. I feel like, here it's just normal to be single at this age, right? But, when I put myself in the context of where I'm from, I'm like Peter Pan. I'm like still having fun and I'm still young and, on the weekends we're still going and hanging out in the park while everyone else is changing nappies.
But that's
Diapers
also,
for you guys.
I got it. But
You were
that's
about to call that
also
one?
San Francisco versus like the South, the Midwest,
Right.
Yep.
even the Northeast. I feel like a lot of my friends are definitely like having children faster.
But
Is
even
that-
in big cities in Australia?
Yeah, I think so. Even in big cities, because there's like I still have my whole family in the one city. So you've got all your family there, and it's a lot more of a comfortable environment to sort of settle down in the same place that you're born. But I think in San Francisco, and I mean, I can't really talk about the South, the Midwest, or any of that, having only lived here.
Right.
I've visited New York, I've visited a few places, but you can't unless you've lived there and had friends from there. But back home in Australia, I would be comfortable settling in the same place that I'm from without ever having to move. But everyone here has moved here for a reason. So they're in that frame of mind, that stage of their life where they're like, I'm just going to get after it and have a career and I'm going to do all this amazing stuff. And so a lot of people here are saying, well, hey, like dating's on hold, but I'm still a human being. I still have a need for intimacy and I need all the other things that come with it, sex and, like the ability to have someone to go to the MoMA with.
Yeah.
So people still seek it out, but they don't take it as seriously as people would in my home city.
Interesting. Fascinating. Okay, that's going to be another episode for sure. We love talking about international dating, what that looks like.
I'd be happy to.
I know we've covered US a little, and I mean we got to go deeper still, but we're going global.
We're going global and going south, down under.
Going south. We should take the show on the road and go talk to people in the Midwest and the South.
Yeah, no, we've had that idea and love it.
Yes, let's get on like House on Fire. Is that right?
House on fire. Well, thank you so
Okay.
mutake
Awesome. Well, thank you so much,
you.
Chris, for
Yeah.
telling us your story. People should take more Ubers. This episode was not sponsored by Uber, but yeah, let's take more ride shares.
Take it before you got, 4 times the chance?
Exactly.
Exactly. Half the price, 4 times the chance of meeting someone.
That should be the slogan in the app.
Uber should hire me, let's be honest.
I know.
Uber PR.
Okay, listeners, we're still looking for guests for season 6 and season 7. As you heard from Chris, being on this podcast, it could change your life as much as listening to this podcast. So, we encourage everyone to try to come on our show and be a guest. Okay, let's wrap this up.
Stay dateable.
Your action item for this week is to look for patterns in your dating life. How do you normally meet people? How do these relationships or situations end? What was missing for you? And what do you think you could have done better? Reflect back on yourself and think about what you can personally do to make dating better for you going forward.
This episode is brought to you by Together, a podcast and online magazine that provides tools for better relationships. While it's important to navigate dating and early relationships, what happens 10, 20, 30 years down the road? Listen to stories from real people who have put in the work to form amazing partnerships. Visit together.guide or listen to the podcast on iTunes and all major podcast apps. If you didn't know already, we have a revamped website with articles, videos, and content all about modern dating. You can also find our premium Why series, where we dissect, analyze, and offer solutions to some of the most common dating conundrums. We've had some great feedback about how actionable these episodes are, so check them out on our website or iTunes Music. Also, visit the site today to see the latest about coaching, where we connect you with Dateable approved experts to help with everything from dating profile reviews, coaching, and even gathering real feedback about your dating style in a personalized and affordable way. To connect with us, visit dateablepodcast.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all under Dateable Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and auto-download the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast player so you never miss an episode.